Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Dungeons and dopamine. Da-da. Hello, welcome to episode 9 of Dungeons and Dopamine. I'm Jess.
I'm Bree.
We have last names, but those don't matter anymore.
We're all familiar now.
We've moved past last names.
We have enough listeners. There's like 30 of you.
Yeah. Amazing.
I'm pretty excited.
It's amazing. You guys rock. Thanks.
Yay!
So, we recorded 2 episodes without realizing that your microphone wasn't working.
But now we know.
Now we know.
And we can see it physically on the screen, and we know what to pay attention to.
It's perfect. I can see your voice spiking, and actually mine is quieter, which usually...
Am I louder than you now?
Yeah.
Maybe. Do I need to adjust this gain twirly thing?
Oh.
Oh, that brought it down a little bit.
Oh.
Maybe a little bit less feedback.
You're kind of gamey.
I am a little gamey. Gainy? Gamey. Both.
Yeah, sorry.
Facts
of
knew.
life. So,
Anyway.
Dopamine's good.
We like it. We
I've
try
got
to get
coffee.
more of it every week.
Yeah.
I needed some Nerds Gummy Clusters. This is an unpaid plug for Nerds Gummy Clusters. They are the best candy that exists.
Who makes nerds?
It's the Ferrera Candy Company in Chicago. So
Perfect. Ferrera, shout
maybe
out.
they don't ruin water for everybody, and I can continue to eat Nerds.
We love you guys. You're amazing.
Yeah,
and
hopefully.
We're here if you want us to plug your products. I'll even just be paid in free products.
Yeah, if you
Let's
just
be
want to
honest.
send us some Nerds Gummy Clusters.
I mean, money's great too.
We'd
but
talk about you every week.
all the time.
Constantly.
Oh, we could put a bowl of them on the desk between us. That wouldn't be an audio nightmare.
While we podcast, I'm sure it will sound wonderful.
Oh gosh. Okay. I'm very excited about this next topic.
Apparently.
I went and got a haircut.
Yay!
And the person that haircuts me, the person that cut my hair, she's really, really nice. But it's a little awkward because I already feel awkward getting my hair cut, and I don't know them very well. And I feel like I have to talk throughout the whole thing to keep them like entertained. That's like that's why I make friends, because I feel like I have to entertain people.
No wonder you're exhausted all the time.
Right? I give so much. No, I don't. So I was telling her that I wanted my bangs cut a little shorter, and I always have to point out that I have a widow's peak, because otherwise I can look ridiculous if they cut things the wrong way. I said... So I have this widow's peak. I have to be careful because, it's weird face shape and stuff. And then I was like, oh my gosh! And she stops and she's like, yeah? Like, my best friend used to call me heart face, and I just remembered that in this moment right now.
What? Yes, I did call you that.
And then I said, I'm going to tell her this, but I'm going to wait until we're on our podcast and get her actual reaction recorded.
Wow.
So yeah, heart face, and I might have permanently scarred my reputation with that hairdresser. But she finished my haircut, and...
Next time she's going to see your name on the books, and she's going to be like, no thanks.
No,
Can you call
I'm
her
good.
and tell her no?
I don't like her ugly heart face.
She has an awful heart face.
So yeah, that was one of my spots of dopamine. I mean, the haircut was good too.
Right.
And she did a nice job, and I bought the shampoo that makes my hair super soft.
Well, I love that.
Me too.
What brand is it?
It's pink.
Perfect.
The bottle is pink.
I probably would have bought it just for that reason.
Right. It smells good.
And that reason.
I noticed that the more expensive shampoos are thicker.
Yes.
Which, I guess, I don't know why it bothers me, but I feel like I'm using more of it and it's expensive, and I'm like, why though?
Why would they do it like this?
Why would
Probably to make you buy more.
Probably.
Or maybe you could
And
use
it might
less. You just have to...
scrub it more. Whatnot. This is not an episode that's better than segues. So...
We don't have any good segues or transitions
Nothing.
for this one.
So, today,
What brought you dopamine this week?
It's one of those things that really shouldn't have again. I'm still in the brain. I will not reveal whose brain I am in.
Everyone.
It's not mine, because I clearly don't have one. So today I am going to talk about something I feel like a lot of people know about, but very vaguely. And that is Munchausen syndrome.
Ooh, this one is one of the creepiest for me. Especially now that I have a child.
Yes. So, that's a great way to begin. Munchausen's is actually what they call a factitious disorder, because you are technically not ill in the medication will make you better kind of way. You're not ill with like a cold, or you are mentally ill is kind of the idea about it. So someone with Munchausen syndrome is someone who will deliberately act like they are sick with a physical or mental illness when they're not actually sick, of course. And it's a mental illness equated typically with severe emotional difficulties. And the people who have Munchausen's are different from other people who do kind of these like pretending disorders, which I hate saying that, but
right,
because they're not seeking like wealth, or they're not trying to gain anything except attention, which is actually really sad. So they make up these sicknesses. A lot of times they're associated with healthcare work, so they have a pretty vast knowledge of healthcare. They can act out these symptoms or pretend that when they're home they're throwing up, or whatever they have to say to make it sound the most real.
They know the boxes to check.
Yes.
To
the buzzwords.
Yeah. To get it investigated, or to have someone pay attention.
Exactly. This is different than malingering because they're out for money. So this is when you pretend you've been hit by a car, or you slipped outside in a parking lot, and that kind of thing. But they're not after that. They just want the attention that comes with it, and sometimes the notoriety.
Okay.
So like, weirdly... Oh, sorry.
Like if they pretend to have maybe like a disease that's rare.
Yes.
They would... Okay.
Or just even that, I have cancer and I need a benefit. They don't care about the money that benefit is bringing in. They care about the people who show up and give them attention. It's very sick. So the symptoms of this disease are strange because they're not physical symptoms, but they're pretending they are. The things that they'll pretend they have are things like chest pain, stomach problems, fevers. They will pretend to hear voices, like a schizophrenic, or to have different personalities. The actual symptoms that they're going to have are things like the presence of a lot of surgical scars. Symptoms will only be present when other people are around. And usually, I mean, they might pretend in front of medical staff, but not in front of their family. But they want the attention, so they're probably going to do it in front of everyone. They're going to be really willing and sometimes even eager to have any test, regardless of the ramifications. So if it's a dangerous test, they won't even think about it. They'll just agree to it.
Because really, they're just getting more attention.
Exactly. And, I mean, what nurse isn't going to go out and say, oh, they're totally willing to do this, and talk about it with the rest of the nursing staff, and the nurses are going to come in and say, wow, you're so brave. Because you would be if you were truly allowing them to run that test. But this is just different. They will be reluctant to follow any kind of medical treatment plans that they're given. And of course, really the main symptom and the main cause of it all is that they're going to show problems with their identity and their self-esteem. They just don't feel good about themselves. There's no exact cause of Munchausen's. There's been a lot of research about it. There's obviously psychological factors, things that stem from them, often in childhood. Something that was really traumatic, that this is how they release that, I guess.
Is there anything that shows, like, children of neglect tend to follow this path more than well-loved children?
Yes and no, because it's really hard to study because the people are so, I guess, skilled at what they're doing.
That's a good point. That would all have to be self-reported.
Yes.
Because it's not something that it's not something in your brain that they can't put it under a microscope and be like, oh, this is why they do it. Interesting.
Exactly. Only about 1% of Munchausen's cases are actually identified. Something that I thought was really surprising, because I feel like you know where I'm going eventually with this whole talk, but this is actually more prevalent in men.
Really?
And I'm glad you're surprised by that, because when I told Ryan, he laughed and he was like, well, haven't you ever met men? We're big babies. Like, we get a cold and we act like the world is ending.
Well, yeah, but not to the point where you'd go to the doctor about it.
Right, exactly.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I thought that was a really,
and
really
I guess,
interesting fact.
Like, anytime I've seen it portrayed on any television shows, it's always a woman.
Yes. I think that's what it is. It's media, because it's so rare that that's how it's portrayed. Well, and so I'll be getting into this soon. Munchausen's by proxy is typically when a parent makes their child sick. And that is usually portrayed being a mother. And the popular cases are mothers.
Right.
I have some of those to go over as well. There is a high probability that if you have been diagnosed with Munchausen's, you also have some sort of personality disorder. Feels very hand in hand with the severity of it. It's hard to find the right words, because I don't want to say things like normal or crazy, because these people very clearly are ill. But it's hard when you're describing it not to say those things. It doesn't typically affect children. They can impose it on themselves, but it's usually young adults or grown-ups. Grown-ups. As you can tell, I am not.
As you can tell, Jessica has a 7-year-old.
Exactly. Let's go potty.
Yep. Use words like potty and grown-up and bedtime and nun-night.
And don't lick the wall.
Stop touching that.
The things I say as a parent. According to the Psychiatric Times, 30 to 70% of those who falsify illness in children, which we're going to go over later, Munchausen's by proxy, will also falsify it within themselves.
Okay.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Attention to them is attention. So, the treatment is psychotherapy. You've got to sit down and chat it out with your doctor. It can be very difficult to treat. And that brings me to Munchausen's by proxy. And this is the one that I really wanted to talk about, because this one blows my brain up. Munchausen's by proxy is a person who creates the appearance of health problems in another person. Most of the time, this includes children. It's where the main focus is. And it is usually a parent making their children sick. And a lot of times it's a mother making their child sick, which I can't comprehend. Because if Carly were sick, even if it's just a cold, I would take that from her every time.
Absolutely, 100%, without question.
Yeah, I can't even imagine. Like, when she is sick, I have a hard time taking care of myself, because I am focused on her. And Ryan has to take over taking care of me like I'm a little kid.
Right.
Did you eat? Did you this? Are you ready to go to bed? Because I just want to take care of her. So the fact that someone would purposely do that to their kid, just
to get attention.
It doesn't compute. So the other thing I did want to point out, I think it's important, is it's not just children. Caregivers will also make the elderly sick to get that attention. They will sometimes make a mentally ill adult sick, or a physically, like a neurodivergent adult, someone who might be autistic or yes. And then pets.
Oh,
I know.
That's not even fair.
I know. Your kid at least might eventually be able to say, no, my mom's been doing this to me, but your pet can't do anything.
Right.
and your insurance does not cover your pet,
No.
you are going to pay a fortune.
That's true, too. These Munchausen people must be rich.
Ugh, for real. The ones that make their pets sick. Ugh. Anyway. Ugh. So, sometimes this gets so serious that they are altering test samples. Once again, these are typically people who have worked in healthcare or know healthcare. So a lot of times they can jump in and make the person seem sick when they're not. Or they can falsify symptoms and test results to make it appear that they are. Mm-hmm. They might also say things like they see a failure to thrive in their child, allergies, vomiting, asthma, diarrhea, seizures, infections. They can try for very serious things like cancers, chronic diseases, stomach problems, just serious health conditions. There have been a lot of notable cases, which are at the very bottom of my notes today, so I will talk about some of those because I know that's kind of what people relate to. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times, even though they're not trying to, they will defraud charities and things like that, because things like Make-A-Wish and stuff like that.
Right.
It's not necessarily about wanting, say, to go to Disney World, but more of just wanting that notoriety and being on the local newspaper.
Yeah. Look at me, pay attention.
Yes.
Feel bad for me.
So, it's so wild. I know I've read all about this, and I know that it's real, and I know it exists, but my brain cannot comprehend. Munchausen's by proxy is considered child abuse, as it should be.
Right.
And healthcare professionals will usually describe it as medical child abuse, which I think is even a step further in seriousness.
Probably depending on how far they took it.
Right, yes.
Now, in your reading, so somebody who has Munchausen's and is trying to get attention just for themselves, typically would they pretty much fake the symptoms? They just know, like, the buzzwords you said, rather than actually making themselves ill? Whereas it sounds like with Munchausen's by proxy, half the time, or a lot of the time, they actually do something to make the other person ill.
It's a really good question. It does, in just my research, it does seem like it. There weren't a lot of actual examples of people with Munchausen's because they don't think they cause as much of a stir as you hurting someone else, kind of a thing.
Right.
So I didn't see any examples. I imagine people might make themselves throw up and things like that, but I don't think anybody's giving themselves like broken limbs or unfortunately one mother was found out that she was putting salt into her child's IV to falsify some sort of test. Mm-hmm. And it wound up killing him.
Oh. Yeah, that's not an electrolyte you want to play around with.
No, exactly. It's so stupid. So horrible. What? Oh, just thinking of my kid's face. I can't even.
Right.
Makes me want to go buy her some ice cream.
Presents for everyone tonight.
Exactly. Snuggle time.
Right.
We're gonna stay up late and watch a movie.
I'm not letting you out of my sight.
No, don't salt that popcorn.
We don't like salt anymore.
No. It's very difficult to catch, especially a parent who is Munchausen by proxy, because they're portraying this guise of the doting parent, the fearful parent, the loving, concerned parent. It's gross. I guess they might be the loving, concerned parent. There's just something really wrong with the way they're loving and caring. A lot of the weird symptoms, I suppose, once again, you would see in a parent like this would be, of course, lying about a child's symptoms, manipulating tests, falsifying medical records, inducing symptoms by poisoning, suffocating, starving, injecting feces, or causing infection. People that are causing this, the Munchausen's by proxy, they're usually between 20 and 40. They might be a healthcare professional. They're going to act really friendly and cooperative. They appear to be really concerned with their children. They seem to be very interested or very knowledgeable about the medical terminology and issues. They're very comfortable in the hospital environment. They'll often become really angry if the doctor tells them that nothing is wrong or questions them about symptoms. They have problem with identity and self-esteem. And the symptoms in a child or someone suffering with Munchausen's by proxy, they're really sad. I don't necessarily want to go through them, but I'm going to, because if you ever saw this in your life or someone around you, it's kind of good to...
Right.
I hope nobody. I hope nobody. It's my new t-shirt. I hope nobody.
I hope nobody.
So people with this might have a history of multiple hospitalizations, visits, and doctor visits, oftentimes to different cities and different hospitals around the area so that they aren't as easily tracked.
That makes sense.
They have a strange set of symptoms that can't be identified or understood by the healthcare professionals, and the parents will often report that the symptoms are worse when they're not at the hospital or at the doctor. They get worse as soon as they leave. The child's condition will improve while they're at the hospital because there's no way to hurt the child in the hospital.
Right.
And then when they go home, they'll get sick again. The illness won't respond to treatment. Test results are unusual or even clinically impossible and do not match the child's reported condition. The parents are going to be really eager to have more procedures done again. This is very similar to Munchausen's itself. Blood samples submitted by the parents won't match their children's blood samples.
Ooh. Is there like a black market for buying blood test results?
I don't know. I'm glad I didn't think to look for that.
Let's not Google that.
No. My FBI agent is already confused by the things I've been Googling the past few months.
Listeners, if you know about this, we want to hear about it.
But we don't want to hear about why.
Right. I don't want to know why
yourself.
You know this. Just maybe you read an article somewhere.
Yes, absolutely. There's a lot of articles about it.
But I'm not typing that into my Google search.
But you feel free.
Yeah.
Your Google searches probably aren't as sus as ours are. I hope
yeah,
they're
it's
not
got to
as
be
sus
way
as ours.
safer for you to do it than us at this point.
I literally Googled all about the Titanic like a month and a half before that sub went down.
I'm still pretty sure you somehow had a hand in that.
Someone I was talking to the other day said, could they just leave it alone? Clearly that ship wants to be done.
No, I think they're just hiding the fact that it is the Olympia. And
that's right.
They didn't want, and it brought new questions up when our podcast episode happened, and they decided to do an excursion to figure it out. And
I mean, you're right.
JP Morgan was like, no, man, this is my secret.
Jessica Wozniak, you do not tell people my secrets.
You should probably watch out.
Should not be sitting by a big open window all day, every day while I work.
They're totally going to sniper you.
I'm going to put bulletproof glass in. It's going to cost a fortune, but it'll be worth it.
We're going to need more Patreons.
Yeah, guys. Help.
For this level, you help us install bulletproof glass.
And if Disney ever gets upset with us, I don't even know if that'll help.
True.
I'm walking right into the lion's den. Or Carly.
You can be queen of Disneyland.
You. This is very Momo. We're really drawing a lot from our past podcasts.
No, only our past. My life did not exist until 9 weeks ago.
I don't really know how to follow that up. I feel like that's the end of the podcast.
The end.
We're done. We're not going over your stuff today.
Nope. This is all we can handle.
So, one other symptom that I think is really interesting is that the parent will often refuse to allow the doctors to speak with other family members. If it's a home full of people, they will not allow them to talk to those people in the home. If there's aunts, uncles, grandparents that maybe care for the child while the parent is away, no, they cannot talk to them. Which makes sense because, Granny
might have a different story.
Exactly.
She don't know.
So, I think that the most famous case of this is Gypsy Rose. And I think her mom was named Dee Dee Blanchard. I could have just looked at my notes because I have it written there. So,
nope. You have to do it from memory.
This is the only way it's allowed. We have really strict rules. that don't make any sense on this podcast.
It's like to stick to the old test taking rules. You have to have it all memorized. You can have one small note card of cheat sheets. That's it.
I mean, I'd probably be smoother.
True.
Probably be more nervous. Anyways, Dee Dee Blanchard. She kept her kid, Gypsy Rose, so sick that she spent most of her life in a wheelchair. It seems that Gypsy started to figure out what was going on. She met a boy and they killed her mother. There are a lot of movies, a lot of shows. You can pretty much Google this and watch the show from several different like platforms. It's wild. A few other cases that I did find out were Blanca Montano in 2013 was accused of contaminating her infant daughter's IV lines with fecal matter, so her daughter would have bacterial infections. Infants are so helpless. The baby could do I'm so mad.
Right.
Hope Ybarra kept a blog canceling.
She canceled it all.
She canceled Munchausen's. It was amazing. It was the best 2 years of the world.
The whole world.
Hope Ybarra kept a blog chronicling her personal journey with cancer. So this is one of those that kind of did affect people and got put out there. I've also seen some people on TikTok who've been accused of... There's a girl who has had a scar on her face, but if you watch her TikToks, the scar kind of like moves and changes like size and shape. And
it every day?
Yes.
And
I don't know that would necessarily be... I guess it would probably be a form of Munchausen's.
Yeah. It would, yeah.
So Hope also fabricated illnesses in her children. She even confessed that she poisoned her youngest daughter with pathogens stolen from her workplace that caused anaphylactic shock.
What?
And she used nasal spray to manipulate a test for cystic fibrosis. How? No.
I wouldn't even know where to start with that.
Right. No, she worked at a job. She got the pathogens that she used on her child from her job. So she clearly worked with something.
Right. She had the knowledge and the...
Yeah. I feel like someone who works with pathogens or has access to them should have a fairly good mind. It's terrifying.
Right.
There was a woman who killed 8 of her 9 children using Munchausen's by proxy, just making them sick.
How did she get through 8 of them before anybody figured it out?
I know, only one of them. Can you imagine being the one child that was safe? She was probably still being, they were probably being still poisoned or sickened.
Sickened? Yeah.
But this survived it, had a stronger constitution or something, or was getting less or something.
Had a stronger constitution, like this is D&D.
Oh, how horrible, right? Like, she rolled a nat 20. It's a terrible joke.
I like that.
It's only 10 years old. It's too soon. Although we did just joke about the sub, and the sub was like 4 months ago. Not even. No, like a month ago.
That's true.
Was it even a month ago?
I have no idea.
Hi, why don't you know this?
I still think it's July 8th. It's not. It has not been July 8th for at least 4 days.
At least. At least 4 days. And my last story was of the woman who killed her son. He was 5 by putting salt in his feeding tube. I think I said IVs, but it was feeding tube.
That makes more sense.
It's just, she thankfully was sentenced to 20 years to life in prison.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I hope she gets it.
I hope so. I hope. Anyway, yeah. I don't want to throw out nasty things into the world besides, the stories and the facts. I don't need to send out my own nastiness. So I just hope that justice is served for all of these poor kids and for the people who lie. And really, it's very sad because they really need help.
Right.
They are obviously in really rough shape.
They're obviously broken.
So anyway, that's freakishly what brought me dopamine this week.
I always think of The Sixth Sense.
Yes.
That's my first thought. But then I also used to watch a lot of doctor shows like ER, and there's always at least one case of Munchausen's by proxy.
Yep.
On any of the doctor shows.
So
all right then.
If we were cool and we had, I think, 6 more listeners, fresh new listeners, not repeat listeners, we would put an ad in right here.
Right.
Like,
so by
MeUndies.
Next week, if we can get 6 more listeners.
MeUndies, Bombas, they're always. League of Legends. We'll talk about League of Legends.
Absolutely.
Nerds.
We've already offered.
What's up? We're just here waiting for you.
Just waiting for that email. Have your people talk to my people, which is
us.
So just reach out to us. Thanks.
We're here. We're waiting. Disney. Oh, Disney. You could sponsor
they
us.
could totally sponsor us.
We might have to alter our content, but I'm not going to lie. I would sell out for Disney.
I've seen what they put on Disney Plus now.
Exactly.
I'm sure with some warnings we would be just fine.
Deadpool.
Yeah, Deadpool's on Disney.
You usually have something happier to talk about.
I have something much happier.
Yay.
It does involve the brain though.
Well,
so we're kind of on the same wavelength there.
We're going to talk about crack.
Surprise!
Crack makes people so happy.
It's so good for you. So much better than Munchausen's. So I'm going the complete other side of the spectrum. I'm going to talk about helper's highs.
Okay, yeah.
So I did not know this was a thing. I've heard of runner's highs.
Yep.
And I have heard of drug highs, but I did not know that helper highs were a thing.
And I've heard of the opposite, too, of burnout.
Yes,
like
caregiver burnout and just general burnout. Mm-hmm. So this started, I had to spend a week in Detroit for a conference for my township job. I really enjoy learning, and there are always, 10 to 20 different topics. So I went to this conference. I actually went early so I could do what they called a master class. I was pretty hesitant about it at first because, again, sometimes these topics end up being pretty cheesy. But this one was actually, I felt like I got a lot out of this one day of my conference. And it was all one speaker. His name is Tyler Enslin. And his literal job title is Professional Development Speaker. So this is all he does. From the way he talked, he's got like 30 different topics that he can show up at any conference and just have topics to talk about off the top of his head. He was great, and his first session was actually the one I was interested in. It's called Mastering Your Memory, and it was incredible. It taught me a lot about my brain and memory, but it is absolutely not something I can talk about without like visuals because it just wouldn't work. So if you do want to learn about his memory tricks, you can look Tyler Enslin up online. I'm sure he has a fancy website out there somewhere. And you could probably even hire him to come, teach you things. Because that's what he does.
Maybe he'll come volunteer to be on our podcast.
Yeah.
For free.
I'm going to find him
Tyler?
On social media and tag him. I'm sure he'll be all about it.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
People love doing things for free.
Especially when they usually get paid for it. They
Yeah.
totally want to do it for free.
Refreshing.
We have almost
30
views or 30 people and almost 100 people that have listened to us at least once. But the second part of the second part of the session was called Remaining Positive in Times of Conflict. And the very last thing he mentioned was to be kind. Being kind is obviously important in my life. I'm trying to pass it on to my child. But what this speaker told me is there are actual scientific studies that talk about this helper's high. And I love scientific proof that something is amazing. So I went back to my hotel room, and that's what I did that night is I wrote this podcast episode about helper's highs.
When I look at you, all I think is, gosh, that girl loves scientific proof.
I basically wear it outwardly. You can just tell by looking at me.
Yeah. It's amazing.
And it's
got that scientific proof glow.
Which is also 100% different than when I was in high school because I hated science.
Right.
Hated it. So I went to Google because why wouldn't you? but I specifically looked for studies done by the National Institute of Health, because that was what he specifically talked about, the study done by the National Institute of Health. And this is probably the study that started all of it. And they actually did brain scans of people doing something nice or generous. And it showed that the parts of the brain that lit up when you're being generous or when you're being kind are the same areas of the brain that light up when you're doing something pleasurable. Whether that's eating good food, having a good time in the bedroom, doing the certain drugs that make those same parts of the brain light up. Basically, your brain is reacting to generosity or kindness the same way it reacts to morphine. So it's super happy.
That's amazing.
Isn't that incredible?
Now that makes me think like being kind should be like a diet plan. The kindness diet.
It should be.
Which actually sounds like you should stop being kind. So we should think of a better name than that.
We should have a better name. We do not want to diet on
this
kindness.
Is the kindness diet.
This week you can only be kind once a day.
Next week it's half kindness once a day. Right. Eventually you won't even be kind at all.
Not at all.
You're gonna look amazing.
So this study actually showed that, and I guess they focused on donating money, and it would actually light up the mesolimbic system in the brain. And this part of the brain reinforces stimuli such as sex, food, drugs, and money by releasing the feel-good neurotransmitters such as oxytocin and vasopressin. And I would like to someday probably do some episodes on the brain chemicals like oxytocin. But if you don't know, that's like the bonding hormone. So oxytocin is the hormone that our body produces when we go into labor, so that we actually like our child when it comes out of us, even though we're in pain. Yeah. It's the one we produce when we're breastfeeding to cause that bond. And it's also they call it the love hormone. So when you're really into somebody, especially in the beginning of a relationship and you're feeling all that new relationship energy, it's a lot of oxytocin. So your brain is producing the same hormones as when you fall in love, when you're generous or when you're kind.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
That's amazing.
And then it gets better. So they continued these studies. And the same National Institute of Health, in a different study, found the same results just from people thinking about being generous or being kind, or remembering being kind or being generous. So they did a study where they brought participants in and they told them the study was for a different reason, but they'd like be in one room and say they have to move to a new room. And the interviewer would gather up all their stuff and their hands would be full and they'd like drop a pencil. And they'd give the person being tested or person participating in it the chance to pick up the pen or hold the door open for them or do something kind in that small amount of time.
A small act of kindness.
And then asking them about it later during the study would show that those parts. So you're not even just while you're doing it, when you're remembering that you did something nice, those parts of the brain light up.
That's crazy. And then it makes you wonder why your brain is so hellbent on remembering all the bad stuff.
Right.
Because if you can get all those happy, fun chemicals from remembering something great that you did, like the time you held the door for that guy, or like paid for somebody's food at a restaurant, why don't we like hang on to that? Why are our brains trying to sabotage us?
Right. And I think that's why advice like practicing gratitude helps us to be happier people. Because remembering and taking the time to remember things that we're grateful about, or maybe now we need to change it to remembering times you were helpful to somebody. It puts our brain back in that like feel good, happy moment versus all of the negative stuff that we're bombarded with outside of our own brains all the time, and sometimes in our own brains. So then the studies keep going. One study revealed that even thinking of helping others activates the same part of the brain as actually physically receiving the rewards. And they actually went and studied brain scans from monks that were meditating on compassion, and they found that not only is the part of the brain lighting up that's like the happy drug chemical part of the brain, but it also lights up the planning part of the brain. So when you are thinking about being generous or thinking about being kind or remembering a time you were or wanting to do more, your brain isn't just like, oh, that makes me happy. It's also saying, oh, that makes me happy. Let's do it. And I think that's why we get so excited, especially myself with ADHD. I get really excited when I'm somewhere, if I'm at a benefit and everybody's talking about helping these people, and when I'm in the moment, I'm really ready to take on the whole world and fix all the problems.
That makes sense for your time at the Kidney Foundation.
Yes, when I was going to save the whole world from diabetes and kidney disease. Another study showed that this feeling can also last several weeks after you do whatever kindness act you're doing. And again, keeps happening even just remembering it. So unlike drugs, where you usually need additional hits or, it's always an increase in how much you need, and that's how addiction happens. With this helper's high, just remembering it is giving you the same hit or the same effect as when you actually did it. So you don't have to be out there, oh, I need my next hit of kindness. You can just remember that you were kind.
Do you get different levels or different amounts of it depending on what you do? So if I hold the door open for someone at the gas station versus if I donate to GoFundMe.
I don't know for sure. The research didn't really talk on that specifically. But one thing that I did find interesting, and what I was just going to talk about, is it works better if you have a specific plan. So,
okay.
Talking about the Kidney Foundation, when my thing was, oh, I hate kidney disease, I'm going to go work for the Kidney Foundation so that I can help people not have kidney disease. That's a pretty broad goal, and you don't necessarily get the reward as much from it because I'm never going to solve kidney disease. It's always going to be a thing.
So you got a bigger reward for planning the event.
Yes.
I'm thinking the kidney crawl.
Yes.
You got a bigger buzz from planning that event than just being at the Kidney Foundation and working there.
Mm-hmm. Or running the diabetes prevention classes.
Sure,
that was a bigger reward than just, oh, I'm going to work for the Kidney Foundation someday because I want to save the world. Having a small part of the world that I could actually change actually gave me the reward, and it's a bigger reward than if I'm just oh, I want to be a good person.
That's so cool.
Today I was a good person because I was in my local community and I helped clean up a park. That's going to be a bigger hit than I want my community to be better, so I'm going to do something someday. Then it gets even crazier to me. I was not expecting to find this information, but there are a number of studies. So the Cleveland Clinic in 2016 kind of took a bunch of studies and put them all together, and they list just a ton of them. All of these studies actually found a variety of actual physical health benefits, like lower blood pressure, a longer lifespan, lower stress levels, less depression, increased self-esteem, and overall greater happiness. One study from the University of California, Berkeley, actually the conclusion was that people 55 and older that have volunteered for 2 or more organizations were 44% less likely to die over a 5-year period. And that is when they take all the other factors out. So they looked at people that were of similar age, the same sex, similar other health problems, and people that had been out volunteering were 44% more likely to live a longer life. Some just other small things that I found that I thought was really cool. This feeling can happen even if you're not physically or actually helping a human or a person. A lot of people will feel this generosity or this feeling that makes that part of the brain light up when they're viewing pictures of something beautiful. So usually it's something like the Grand Canyon or a vast starry night, something that's very big and makes you feel small. And they think that's probably because it makes people feel more connected, have more of a feeling of oh, I'm just a small part of this whole big thing that's going on.
It's almost like a sense of community.
Yeah. And it just kind of increases that connection to their fellow humans, and that part of the brain starts to light up, and they're more generous in those situations. I found a lot of references to different religions when it came to generosity. A lot of religions will talk about, whatever you give will be returned to you tenfold. Even as far as like paganism and Wiccanism, that usually goes into the rule of 3. So whatever you give will be returned to you threefold. So with all of that, I really wanted to just spend the last couple minutes talking about how you can be generous or be kind without spending a lot of money. Because I think a lot of people get caught up on, well, I can't be generous because I don't have any money. I can't donate to my charity because I really need my money at home. One of the first things was kind of acts of service gifts, and it's become kind of a buzzword in the last few years because people have started talking about love languages.
Yes.
But acts of service, whether it's for your spouse or your partner or just out in the world, it's as simple as, picking something up for someone, or if you are at home, doing the dishes so your spouse doesn't have to. If you're at work, taking care of something. If you share a space, we always argue at the office over who does the dishes. So things like that would still be generous and kind and helpful. You could make creative or handmade gifts. These don't have to be physical gifts. It could be songs, it could be writing, just a nice card that you send to somebody to tell them that you're thinking about them. The biggest thing, especially with your children and your friends and family, is your time.
Yes.
I think people get caught up in wanting to be able to give physical items, but I'm hearing more and more and learning more and more that really it's your time that's the important part. So being there for your friends and family, your nieces or your nephews, people that you don't really think to make time for because they're maybe not in your household and they're outside. This could also be for volunteer organizations. So if there's a particular cause that you're really into, whether it's animals or kidneys or diabetes, there are ways to volunteer your time and make a difference that way. Or maybe in your local community, if there's, somewhere a food place where you can
hand
donate to,
oh my gosh,
hand out soup, or the
Yes.
food pantries that meet to hand out food once a month.
Every year we have Toys for Tots.
Yep.
And they not only do they need gifts that people donate, but they actually also need people to, they call them shoppers.
Yeah.
So the people who come in to choose the gifts for their children are led with a shopper who says, okay, well, you can pick 3 large gifts for Carly, and then you can pick 3 stocking stuffers for Carly. Mm-hmm. And you kind of walk them through. And that feels amazing. We used to do that with a company I worked with, and it was one of the best highs.
And it's not a huge time commitment.
No.
That's something you do once a year for a couple hours probably.
Yeah.
And you're making a huge difference in someone's life. You're going to get these happy brain chemicals now. And it took you a couple hours, a couple weeks before Christmas.
I got so many hugs when I did it. I mean, getting a hug from a stranger just because I was there when they needed me was amazing. And I never thought about it as a helper's high, but that's exactly what it was.
Yeah. And
I'm feeling all tingly just thinking about it, like you said.
See? Your brain chemicals are lighting, or your brain's lighting up. It's releasing all those chemicals. It's doing all the happy stuff. And those people probably do remember you. And they don't remember you because you gave them money or they think that the toys came from you. They remember you because you were there. Because you took the time out of your life and spent it with them.
With
to
a
help
smile
them.
and some kindness and a hug at the end of it.
Right. And that kind of goes into the next one is really just being present when you're with other people and, practicing your listening skills versus always wondering or always thinking about what you're going to say next or worrying about what you're going to say. Actually paying attention to people and listening when they talk.
That's such an ADHD specialty.
Yes.
We're always, personally, I'm always thinking, oh, I want to tell you this, but then I have to stop and be like, no, I need to listen to what you're saying. Or I'll look at my husband and say, I didn't hear what you just said. I'm really sorry.
I missed that because I knew that it reminded me that I needed to tell you this.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And that's stinking awful.
It is. And we live in a world where some of that is necessary because we're all so busy.
Yes.
So a lot of times it is trying to, okay, I don't want to interrupt you, but I need to tell you this. If I don't tell you this right now, then I'm going to forget. So I have to tell you this.
Yes.
And being ADHD, we do have a tendency to relate to people by storytelling, which for some people, which I think we've talked about on a previous episode too, like for some people, it sounds like they're just story tapping. And for some people, they are. They're just tapping whatever story you have. But for most of us, it's just our way to try to connect and understand and tell the other person that we empathize with them.
Yes.
We understand what they're going through.
I had the same feels that you had.
Yes, that happened to me. And
don't
I
you
know
want to be
how
my
you
friend
feel.
now?
Yes.
Now, I have a question. Creating those chemicals, is that like if I compliment people?
Yes.
Oh, were you going to say that? I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Sorry, I
that's
just kicked
on
you
my
too.
list of like free things you can do for people. So I'll skip to that part. So small acts of kindness, smiling at people, complimenting people, holding the door, picking up something they dropped, returning your carts at the grocery store, paying it forward. I know a lot of people will buy a $5 gift card at the cash register and leave it with the cashier to apply to the next order. I read a story recently, or a recommendation, where people will ask the cashier what their favorite candy bar is, but then at the end of the order, you give them the candy bar that you bought.
I love that.
Just tiny, and that's what, I mean, candy bars are kind of expensive now. They're probably like $2, but $2, and you probably make their day. Tipping extra on your bill when you can afford it. I shop at Aldi, and I always leave my cart, or the quarter in my cart. I push the cart back, I bring it all the way back, but I leave the quarter in there. It probably doesn't make a difference to anybody's budget, but sometimes it's hard to find a quarter and you forget you brought it, and you have 2 dimes and a nickel, and
You might have made a big difference in that mom who's carrying the baby in one arm and has the toddler in the other hand, and then the 6-year-old is running ahead because he wants to get the cart, and she's gonna rip her hair out.
and the 6-year-old just dropped the quarter down the drain, and
Exactly. Or she has to fish it out of her purse, and that could have made such a huge difference to them.
Exactly. Other things, supporting local businesses. I talk a lot about supporting our local community, our
Or
local
small
businesses.
podcasts.
Support us because we're a small local podcast.
And then we'll talk about you, and you'll remember your kindness.
And we'll thank you forever.
And I'll probably cry.
Yeah. And it'll give us dopamine and you dopamine. It'll be great.
Just saying.
So, and that doesn't always have to be money. That can be time, like listening to a podcast. It could be helping them market. So whether you're, telling people about it word of mouth, leaving reviews on Google, doing social media to share a post, or even just plug a business, those are all really good, kind, generous things to do. And the last little bit is, really just being kind. Something I had to do at the Kidney Foundation, it was kind of like it wasn't a conference, it was just a session we had with some of the girls from the main office. But we spent a whole afternoon just trying to work on our positive thinking.
Sure.
So some of the social workers from the Kidney Foundation main office came over and kind of held like a team building session with us. And something I got out of it, and something that's kind of become my mantra when I'm thinking about other people, especially when I'm having a bad day, is to remember that really most people are really just doing their best. Nobody is out there trying to maliciously hurt me. Nobody is out there trying to ruin my day. Nothing anybody else does that affects me was meant to irritate me or make me mad or throw a wrench in my day. It's just how it happened, and everybody is really just doing their best.
I have this really stupid philosophy. So they have those like quote unquote Karen videos on the internet, and I watch them, and these people make me furious. But I try after I watch them, because I am mad, and then I start like berating them and calling them names and stuff like that, because I'm being a jerk. And I've started to try and stop and think, what the heck led this person to this? Because I think a lot of these people, and let's face it, a lot of them are women, are having some sort of mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And and we have no idea what caused what's happening. And of course, no, it doesn't give them a free pass to be violent or angry or to yell at people. But oh my gosh. So I tried to start thinking of that, which sort of sounds like a buzz killer.
But it's true. It goes back to, you have to walk a mile in someone's shoes to understand where they're coming from. You don't know what their day was like. And especially when my son was young and things were hard, there were days I could have been that angry person.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have had anything to do with the cashier I was screaming at or the person on the phone. It would have had everything to do with how my day had gone. And so same thing. I do try to, okay, well, why would they be acting like this? What is going on in their life? Is it a medical emergency? Is it this stupid phenomenon on social media where people sit around and they listen to the police scanners and then they post in groups on what is being said on the police scanners so that the rest of the community can come in and judge whatever the calls are, is horrifying to me.
I actually have never seen any of that, thankfully.
Oh, it's awful. And there's many of them. And I have joined the pages because sometimes I like to know why the highway is clogged.
Sure,
or
yeah.
why the ambulance is going by my house. But people will get on there and, it'll be a call, especially about a kid, and people are immediately on there saying, oh, bad parenting. Oh, I would never let that happen. Oh, how could that happen? And without taking into account that parent is probably really just trying their best.
And you have no
scary
idea.
things happen and awful things happen.
Yeah.
And it's not always someone's fault. We have to give people grace. And that's really part of what the being kind is giving people grace. Giving them a smile when it looks like they're having a bad day. I've approached moms of young children at Target, and you can tell it's just been an awful shopping experience. And I'll go up and say, hey, you're doing a good job, Mom.
Yes.
We have bad days, but look at how good your kids are. They're being really good, and good luck.
Or that waiter or waitress who looks like they're about to break down and cry because the lady over at table 10 didn't get what she ordered, and it didn't have anything to do with you. She probably forgot to say it, but she didn't get it. Now she's berating you. And I've written on receipts, especially I hope you have a great day. We loved you, and stuff like that.
Keep your chin up. It's not your fault. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And then and then still spending time in nature. So I talked a few minutes ago about how being in nature can make us feel more connected to the earth and increase that sense of connection to our fellow man. And then the last two things are kind of serious to me and kind of important, especially in the day and age we're living in. Really, when you're trying to be kind, when you're trying to be generous, especially in the environment we're living in these days, sometimes it's necessary to speak up.
Yeah.
Whether, you're finally standing up to your racist grandfather that is using words that nobody should ever use again. I've explained to people from my parents' generation why there might need to be books in libraries about children that have two dads. Because some children do have two dads. And I think our generation is doing a really good job about being more tolerant of other viewpoints and really making sure that we're being careful about the words we use and how we treat people, and hopefully passing that on to our children.
Gentle correction on some people who, whether they're older or younger, gentle correction, because I agree, speaking up is really important, but I do also understand that you don't necessarily want to alienate Grandpa.
Right.
So saying something like, well, Grandpa, we don't use that word much anymore.
Right.
You don't.
That word's not really okay to use.
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah. I know that it was okay when you were younger, but we don't use that. We
Simple.
try to use this or.
And I would never recommend you ever put yourself in danger.
Of
if
course.
you're in a situation where you don't think you can
Yes.
safely speak up without inciting aggression or violence, then that's not
That's
not
on
your
you.
job.
No.
It isn't your job to change who someone is or fix people that are much more obviously broken than anybody is qualified for. And on the other side of that, there are also times when you're being kind where it's not your turn to speak up. Something I actually learned from Reddit, somebody else had written it. We talk a lot about if somebody is doing something or you disagree with something, before you say anything, you ask yourself 3 questions. Is this necessary for me to say? Is it necessary to be said right now? And is it necessary to be said from me?
Oh, I love that.
So, yeah, I don't agree with someone, the way they're living their life, maybe, how they're spending their money, or how they're choosing to spend their time, or what kind of vices they have. But unless it's somebody that is related to me, or I need to be concerned about their health, or they're in a position where they take care of my child, or something like that, it is probably not necessary for me to say. And there would be very few times it would be necessary for me to say it in that moment. And sometimes it's not necessary. Sometimes people know they screwed up. You don't need to tell them.
Oh, yeah.
They feel bad enough about it already. They're already working on changing things. Like, you don't need to make them feel any worse.
And I would say, too, like, there's a point where just saying nothing is being kind. Mm-hmm. There are people out there who you'll walk in the room and they'll look at you and say, I hate that color on you. Well, why did you need to say that?
It wasn't necessary.
Yes.
It wasn't necessary.
Me wearing this color doesn't have any effect on anyone, and now you've just made me feel bad. There's a good chance that in retaliation, I'm going to say something that makes you feel bad.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I like that a lot.
Being kind doesn't have to cost anything. Being generous doesn't have to either, or it could cost very little. Some of these, especially dog rescues or nonprofits, would be happy if you sent them a bag of dog food a month, or $5 a month would make a difference somehow.
Clearance blankets at the end of the year. I know that a lot of our shelters ask for blankets.
Mm-hmm. Because it gets cold here.
Those cheapy little fleece blankets go on sale at the end of the Christmas season at Kohl's and stuff like that. So,
or Joann Fabrics.
Yeah. So if you could grab a couple and send, one a month to them or something.
Or go volunteer.
Yes.
Go be there. Go hang, take the dogs for a walk every day.
5 cats.
That's why I don't volunteer at animal places. I have enough animals. And you're also getting morphine-like highs off being helpful and being kind and being generous. And I think that's just incredible.
That is incredible. And I was thinking, I know this seems a little bit selfish. Selfish. I know this seems a little bit selfish, but one thing I thought of while you were talking about getting that, and that you get those lights lighting up and you get that chemical reaction when you think about something kind you've done, write it down, journal it, and write, it can be as cheesy as you want, right? Like my kindness journal. And when you're feeling like dirt, grab it and read. And some people might look at it and be like, wow, you're really stuck up. You have a whole journal about how great you are?
But if you're just keeping it in a journal, you're not looking for
you're
fame or notoriety over it.
Yeah.
You could have a whole notebook just for gratitude, positive thoughts, and kindness.
I think that's so cool. Even stupid things. Like, I remember we saw a woman once. It was me and Carly and my mom. And she was dressed to the nines. She looked amazing. She was an older woman. She was in cheetah print, which Carly is obsessed with. So she was getting in her car, and we literally went up and knocked on her window. I said, my daughter wanted you to know that she thinks you look amazing. The face the lady made she was so happy. And I said, and we agree with her, you look so great today.
She probably still thinks about it.
Yes. And she probably puts that outfit on.
Think about it.
Yes.
You still think about it. And Carly will probably remember that forever.
So I love it. Kindness all the way. That's amazing.
And now we know there are health benefits and drug-like benefits to just being nice to people.
Yes.
I
get
wasn't
your
wrong
helpers
all these
high.
years.
Everybody get high.
Yes.
And I want to figure out how to turn this into a slogan that we put on stickers, and everyone in our Patreon gets a sticker. Yes. Everybody get high. Yeah.
Encouraging people to commit random acts of kindness
for a helper's high.
For our names.
Yeah.
With our names.
So, get high.
Yeah. Because we're better than... I got nothing.
We're better than... being high?
We're better than...
Helpers?
We're better than rude people? I don't know. We'll have to work on that one.
We're definitely gonna have to work on that one.
So, yes.
I love it. I think it's a great idea. I encourage everyone listening to follow that advice because I think it's amazing.
And again, these random acts of kindness do not have to be big, large. You don't have to tip someone $1,000 or pay for someone's gas or, treat your whole neighborhood to homemade cupcakes or anything. You could send a text message to your friend telling them that they're pretty or that you love them or that you've been thinking about them. It's simple.
Simple. I love it. It's amazing. So, I think this is a
Me too.
I think we're going to have a ton of bloopers from this episode. I think this is a very successful I bring you down, you bring us up event.
Yeah. Optimist and sometimes pessimistic optimist. To the nines.
To the nines. All right. Come back next week.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye. Dungeons and dopamine.
Woohoo.
Woohoo.